Hello and welcome. I'm Kenneth Cukier, a senior editor at The Economist and the host of the Babbage podcast on science and technology. And welcome to Innovation at Work Virtual Week. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. I'm delighted now to welcome our next speaker, Per Ove Johansen, a solution strategist at the enterprise software provider Citrix. Hello, PO.
Hello, Kenneth. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is great to have you here. And the issue that we're talking about is just so essential. Everyone's thinking about it, everyone's worrying about it. And so I have to ask, as a first question, to put you on the hot seat, what do you think the biggest trend in the workplace that is most likely to last past the pandemic will be?
Everybody's talking about AI, but I actually would say human sustainability would be the next big topic because it involves so many things.
All right. So when you say human sustainability, what are you talking about?
Well, definition of human sustainability from my side would be everything that we've seen now in the past year with the pandemic, having people feel okay when they're home. So the employee wellness, the mental health, the physical health also of people when they're working remotely, in not outside of their office, but sitting at home also. So that's per definition making sure that people are feeling good at home, and at the same time when they do that, they can feel good at work also.
Now, we all know the idea of work-life balance and well-being and mental health. Human sustainability, is that just trying to capture all of those terms, or is that something separate and different?
No, I would say yes. It's capturing those words, like you said. Also, it is part of. I'd say it's a bigger picture than outside of the organization also. And I mentioned AI as part of this. When it comes to new technologies being implemented into organizations, most of the time that involves technology. AI is based on data experts putting up algorithms, but we sometimes miss the personal perspective of this, and what do the employees think of this, the relationship between people, which is also an important part, because if you don't feel empowered, you might be going down the path to burnout. So what we're trying to do here is look at all the elements that so reducing all the elements that brings you on the path to burnout, rather moves you up to the road to flow, I would say. So it depends on the organization where we work in, and what type of community and culture you live in also.
Now, a lot of people think of AI in the workplace and think their job is at risk, but you're looking at it from a different lens. You're seeing something else there. How do you see it?
Well, I see AI is definitely coming, so that's one thing. But it's I'll give you an example that I've read about also. So AI, as I said, algorithms, data experts being the ones that are building and setting up the AI tools that we have. But as an example, if we have a lorry driver or a person that drives a truck, where you have the AI tool making sure that you don't do any left turns because it's a higher risk of accidents appearing. You do right turns only. When you go to the loading docks, you have to do it in a specific way. That's all good, but if the truck driver knows by experience, as an example, a better way of unloading that truck, who does he talk to make sure that that information comes into to the logistics of unloading a truck? Previously, it's always been that you can talk to your manager and so on, and then they can actually agree on doing things. Other things are if you want people to work on weekends, if you have a AI tool setting up schedules, and normally if you build a relationship between a manager and an employee, you could actually start having these discussions of hey, could you do me a favor and work this weekend? I'll give you some extra time off for the summer, or things like this. So you have a different dialogue and a different way of working. So AI is definitely coming in, but it also means that we have to set the different demands on managers and empowerment of employees.
But it's interesting that when we talk about human sustainability and work life balance and sort of mental health, if we're going to bring AI into the mix, people, their
Mhm.
initial reaction is that the AI is going to steal their job. But what you're really describing is how AI will make their jobs easier. AI will take
Mhm.
certain parts of their task and do it, allowing them to then do other parts of their task, maybe that's more fulfilling or more creative, or relies on more of their tacit knowledge that the AI can't capture because the AI is only good at routine things and not the edge cases or the strange exceptions. So when we think about human sustainability, this idea that we're going to have a new workplace and a new culture around that workplace, and AI is going to be a part of it, what do managers and employees need to know to benefit and sort of enrich the human sustainability in the workplace?
Good question. I would say, well, first of all, when we think about technology and IT in that perspective, looking back on the pandemic, and this is learning by history, which is always good, and learning by mistakes also, in that sense. What we see here is that we need to understand, and this has to be a communication between managers and employees, but what we've seen is that a more dynamic approach that gives you the agility to be able to change quickly. Previously, it's been kind of build a strategy, go for it over 3 years, and then if something happens, then you go, whoa, well, what are we going to do? But now we need actually to be as agile as we've been the last year or 12 months, because now we actually have been doing things that we said previously weren't able to do, and has taken longer, much longer time than it has now. But since we've been working together with different parts of the organization, IT has actually started becoming the hero. And this also includes implementing robotics, AI as tools, but still we are working with people and they need to understand the usage of AI, and they need to be the ones that also set the demands on what AI should be doing moving forward. So examples would be micro apps, or the ability to actually move down to a part of the process and skipping the first levels of it, because that's just monotone or administrative work that AI could take care of already. So it's leveling out, I would say.
Now, have you seen in your experience companies that have gone in either direction, those that have used COVID-19 to reshape their business and bring in new technologies to simplify the workplace and give greater human sustainability to their employees? Or, on the contrary, sadly, companies that haven't done that have tried to maintain business as usual and their employees burn out, or they just feel frustrated, or they didn't adopt technology and so they lost a step relative to their competitors.
We've seen all of these scenarios. It depends. I would say the most interesting part is that the job roles, or the employee roles that you've had previously that we thought of as being very demanding, I would say, in different organizations, say brokers in finance or banks. We said that they always need to be center of the city. They need to have the best offices, the highest performing tools, because they're sitting there with four screens and working with a lot of information in front of them. We've actually seen that a lot of them, actually, to be honest, have been performing better when they moved home to sit in the home offices and remote working. Might be because it's not as competitive, so they can focus on what they are seeing in front of them. But it might be other things also. But we've seen changes in how the roles and the employees are being productive. It goes both ways, I would say. So it's really interesting to see how the things that we thought previously a year ago has changed, and they're developing into other types of deliveries and functionalities and productivity increases that we didn't imagine previously. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struck on this idea that people are being more productive now in this new environment than they were before. Can we break that down based on either people's sort of constitution, like their temperament, or their personality traits? Can we break it down by their life experience? People, either employees without kids or kids who are older, whereas there's the sweet spot of the world's best executive who has a toddler at home is just not going to perform well? Or is it, can we break it down by some of the tools that they're using? That if
Uh,
they're video conferences, they're not being productive, but if they're able to just think about the spreadsheet for without having to commute in and commute out to work, they're more productive. How can, because I think this is a quite decisive issue. What we're finding in it's COVID-19, and as you said, the IT department and IT professionals are the new heroes, is that there's a certain class of employee and of executive who's actually far more productive today than they were a year ago. That's fascinating. We've got to capture what we learned there and try to broaden it out throughout the company.
yeah, so I think the first of all, it's a lot of times it's up to the managers to allow or empower, trust the people that sit at home. So, like you said, it's not everybody is becoming more productive. A lot of people actually, well, they're spending more time because of the commuting. So, say they're commuting an hour and a half per day. That means that they now actually are spending that hour and a half at work still. So they're putting more hours into work. Other things that we also, like I previously mentioned, also that we want to reduce is the stress factor. So what I've seen is that we're now using Teams, Zoom, uh, well, Google Meet, whatever it is. So we're using 4 or 5 different types of platforms to communicate on. So you got Slack, other types of communication platforms also. This means that you get pinged all the time. That's also the stress increasing factor. So that's one thing that has become worse, I would say. But then again, back to the managers and allowing the employees when they sit at home to trust that they are doing what they should be doing, and also give them the tools that they need to be able to communicate, and do the work. Training is part of this also, I would say, to be able to train them to use these tools and how to think differently outside of the box is more of the proposal and what I've seen. So think outside the box, do other things that you haven't tried before. So as an example, if you have workshops, how do you use whiteboards? What type of tools and how do you actually present to people in that way? And how do you get them involved and engaged? That's another thing that you need to do.
Is there a way to measure human sustainability? Is there anyone taking a crack at developing metrics to understand what the good looks like and when we've got it and when we don't?
Yeah, and that's also a tricky question because how do you measure? Well, it's people's lives actually. What we're talking about here, and how they are physically, mentally healthy. If you want to go clinical on this, I would say there is a measurement of if you. Well, I'll give you this number instead. Numbers that we've seen in Europe, in the EU. I think it was 2 years ago. They had a little bit above 300 million working days were spent on people being sick at home. Additional to that, they saw a cost, I think it was of about 60 billion euros for people for mental sickness and physical sickness that post 14 days. So 14 days and above, that's the allowance that the companies, sorry, that the public organizations and countries have to pay for these people. So it's huge numbers in this. What we then can see in organizations, if you put it in that aspect and do calculations on this, we can actually see if they can decrease the time that people spend on trainings, if they can work from home. So having them not commuting is one part. So and removing again the elements of stress, which means that we can pull down the average number of sick days for an organization. Say they have 6, 7, 8 days in average sick days per organization and year. If we can reduce that by 2, 3 days, that's a lot of money saved for that organization. Not only that they're not having to pay for the allowance of people being sick, but also they have them in work working for them, which is a value in itself. So Depending on what type of organization you have, again, I would say there's different values in there. They don't have to be metric in currency or dollars or euros all the time. It could be days, percentages, whatever is important to that organization and also to that community of people.
Yeah, but it's substantial. That's really fascinating.
Yes,
Pio,
definitely.
yeah, Pio, thank you very much. That's really great. Thank you, everyone who's been listening. Sadly, that's all we have time for this very short interview, but one that is really deeply rich, and I think one that we're all thinking considerably about as managers, as employees, as spouses. One thing that I'm left with is this idea that Per Jove Johansson said was the IT department is now the hero of the organization, that some people are actually working better under the new constraints of COVID-19, and the hybrid office is going to be here to stay. And one reason why it's here to stay is because on some hands, in one respect, it liberates the employee, but it takes smart managers and smart companies to empower people to actually benefit from this new environment. Thank you all for listening. Please share it on social media and give us your comments and subscribe to The Economist. Thank you very much.